We're here this morning with Lincoln, Nebraska Mayor Leirion Gaylor Baird. Thanks so much for joining us from the Nebraska Promise Program and the Center for Academic Success and Transition at UNL. It's a tremendous honor to have you with us this morning.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you all. Thank you so much for the invitation, Dan, and to the center and to the Nebraska Promise participants. It's a privilege to join you this morning.
Well, absolutely. And my boss, Lori Romano, is on the meeting as well here. And speaking of whom, I wanted to mention too, a year ago, this last February on my birthday, Lori took me to breakfast at Cultiva Coffee on South 11th Street. And as we were there meeting, you walked in and I whispered as much to her. And I thought to myself, wow, wouldn't it be great if someday I could chat with Mayor Baird? And here we are.
Oh, so I wish we could be doing it over coffee, but maybe
Yeah,
next time.
absolutely. And I wanted to share one other anecdote, if I may, as well. 29 years ago this spring, I was a strapping young intern for none other than your former boss, then chairperson of the Natural Resources Committee at the Nebraska Legislature, Chris Beitler. At that time in the early 90s, it was all about water rights. And I was on the filing end of the operation. So non-essential personnel, but a cog in the wheel nonetheless.
So important. Absolutely. Those issues continue to be paramount today. So thank you for
Yes, that's right. I have a lot of admiration for Mayor Beitler as well. So small world. Well, I wanted to ask you to begin, if I may. You hold a BA in history from Yale and from Oxford, a master's in comparative social research. And I wanted to ask you to begin with, describe your undergraduate experience. And did you always know you were going to be a history major?
Oh, well, thanks for the question and good morning, Lori. It's nice to be with you as well. I did not know I was going to be a history major when I went off to college. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I had the thought that I would maybe think about English because that was a subject I enjoyed. And my mom was a high school English teacher. My stepdad was a high school biology teacher. So there was a lot of value placed on education in my home growing up. But I really had an open mind and I wanted to just explore and see what, sort of caught my eye. And so I would describe my college experience, though, just generally as transformational. Before I went off to college, for instance, my experience of women's careers was pretty traditional. I knew my mom was a teacher. My friend's mom was a childcare provider. Another friend mom was a stay-at-home parent. Other moms maybe were nurses or teachers in the schools that I attended, but I really didn't see women in very non-traditional careers until I went off to Yale. And then all of a sudden, people I was meeting there, well, first of all, there were incredible women faculty, incredible women guest lecturers and visitors to the campus, but also my friends' parents. Someone worked at the UN and someone else was the head of a corporation. And it really broadened my sense of what's possible. And I think that's actually the beauty of an education, is broadening your sense of opportunity and what's possible for yourself. That's, for me, college really opened up a lot of doors and opportunities. And in that sense was quite transformational in what I felt my path in life could be.
And you grew up in Portland, Oregon, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Right. Well, we talk a lot in Nebraska Promise how students who matriculate at UNL know going in that they are going to take classes in a lot of different areas outside their major. This is a liberal arts-based university. We talk about the value in that as contributing to one being more well-rounded. Do you remember some of the most impactful courses for you outside your major as an undergrad?
Yeah, I do. I took, let's see, we had distribution requirements. You were sort of meant to take classes across a broad spectrum of disciplines. And I was grateful for that because it meant I took classes I might not otherwise have explored. I took a class in college called Psychology and the Law. And During that class, I learned a lot about the kind of fallibility of witness testimony, about perception and what's reality, and how the justice system may or may not be effective under certain circumstances. And that was an eye opener for me. And during that class, as part of a paper that I wrote, I got to interview a woman who had been in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. And so learning about, how she had been treated under the laws during World War II was, of course, both heartbreaking and eye-opening and informative. So I think just one of the exciting things about college classes is getting to do that kind of original research, getting to speak with people and, write a part of the history yourself if you're a history major. That was a real exciting class for me. I
Absolutely.
also took art history classes, and while many people poo-poo art history as being less practical per se, I have found that it has been one of the more useful classes in the sense that when I travel, when I go to museums, when I look at art, I have a background and a context for understanding and appreciating different forms of art and sort of what may be behind the message of that art. And I feel really lucky to have had the chance to learn about different cultures through their art. And then I also took a class that's really odd sounding, but it's called Myth, Science, and Philosophy in Ancient Greece. Never would have signed up for that class, probably had it not been for people who said, you've got to take this professor, he's amazing. And what that class really was about how the myths we create, the science we hypothesize and research, and the philosophy that we develop really are all aimed at the same goal ultimately, which is trying to understand life around us,
Mm,
human beings trying to make sense
absolutely.
of the world. So I appreciated taking a lot of variety of classes that were impactful in different ways.
That is obvious. And the art history stuff, my admiration for you just went up 4 notches right there. So I love hearing about that. Lori, jump in anytime here too, if you're inclined to that way. Mayor Baird, what do you think of the concept of college as a time to test the waters, experiment, try different things, and maybe even get a little lost academically while you're trying to discern your own pathway?
I absolutely agree with that idea of what college is about. Um, it's about tasting different flavors. It's about finding and discovering something new that you didn't know you were interested in. I can remember very clearly showing up at college, my first person, I guess they call it first year now.
Yes.
And the first year of college, my fresh person counselor looked at the tentative schedule I was developing for myself and said, "This looks like a high school schedule, Leirion. Like you should explore more." Like it was very basic, and I did. I switched, took an archaeology class in place of something else that I had been thinking about taking, and I've often had that same thought when I've had conversations with people I have hired to babysit my children here in Lincoln as they were younger. I hired people from the university to watch my kids. And often they were very focused on a pre-professional track. They felt like they had to major in accounting or business in order to have a business career. And I wanted to just say to them, that's so understandable, but absolutely not true. Like you do not need to major in accounting to have a business career. In fact, you might be better off not doing it because a true entrepreneurial mind is going to be engaged in ideas and discovery and possibility. And there's no one way to start a business. So while it's certainly good to get those skills, and I don't want to I want to of course acknowledge that many of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are from liberal arts institutions where they majored in things like English and history and math.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. Is there anything that you would do differently in your undergraduate experience were you to go back?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I wish I had gotten to know more professors earlier on because those relationships are so valuable. They're valuable because you're getting to access people who are experts in subjects they've studied for years. You could gain real insight into what you're learning by going to office hours, going to those lunch time hours that they may make available. And I did do that in college, but I wish I'd just done it from day one. And also those relationships are important if as you look to identify opportunities, whether it's a summer internship or meaningful research or work opportunities or scholarships in the future. I think, having someone who can actually be familiar with your abilities, your skills, help to cultivate them, and then speak for you in terms of a recommendation, those are things that really, really matter to getting opportunities at a young age when you
Mhm.
clearly have less experience than other people in the job market.
Invaluable.
So that's something I would certainly recommend to any undergraduate is go to those office hours, get to know your professors, develop a personal relationship because you'll just get much more out of your educational experience that way.
Any regrets about not doing that English major? We're all English majors in the cast office.
I love being a history major, so I don't have any regrets. I still took English classes, and I would tell you that writing and written communication skills are actually among the skills I use most often as mayor, hands down.
Absolutely. And who could argue with history as the quintessential liberal arts degree as well? So very good. Uh, Prior to moving to Lincoln, you were director of an innovative after school and summer enrichment program in San Francisco. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, because education and my college experience was so transformative for me personally, and because I had care about leveling the playing field and making sure that more people have an opportunity to avoid all of the social problems that come with poverty, and education is a way out of poverty. Part of my professional career has been focused on youth development programs, and in this role, I was the director of something called the Center for a New Generation. It was an academic, school based boys and girls club that was founded by Condoleezza Rice, a former Bush administration official, and someone who was also very talented at a young age in the arts. And the Center for a New Generation was designed to provide both academic and artistic opportunities for kids from a very low income neighborhood, one that really didn't have access to didn't even have a public high school at the time. And so working at that on that mission was really powerful. We took college students from Stanford and teachers who worked after their normal school day to provide academic instruction. And then we hired visual and performing artists. We had a marching band. We had dance classes and theater classes.
That
And
sounds
really just,
tremendous.
yeah, it was a wonderful after school and summer program that helped children kind of make up for gaps they might have in their normal school day or in their after school lives. And we worked well with parents as well to kind of wrap those opportunities around families and help them succeed in school and life.
Very good. Now, you also have a background very differently in business, and I would like to know how does that inform your current role as mayor? And are there times distinctly when it shouldn't inform your current role? That is to say, when government and universities should not be run as businesses.
Yeah, well, my business experience right out of college, I worked for a consulting firm in the financial institutions group, both in the New York and Chicago offices. And that opportunity taught me a lot about, well, working hard and utilizing data to make arguments, utilizing, I guess, a teamwork approach to solving problems and making recommendations to help businesses succeed. And also just about the importance of precision, the importance of brevity in communication, and the urgency of delivering results. And also, as a first job out of college, very much about just my first experience in the professional world where demands were high and the pressure was high. During that job, I did a lot of work on strategic procurement and how the way you source products for your business can help shape your bottom line and help you be successful. And it's interesting, that was one of the first issues I looked into upon becoming an elected official. Was people are always focused on government expenditures, but they don't necessarily look at government purchasing and how government purchasing can be used to both advance policy goals and be efficient and have good results for the taxpayer. So there was some overlap there actually.
Hmm.
But to your question about when the government shouldn't work like a business, I mean, we aren't operating in the same environment. We are there to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. We're
Right.
there to fill in gaps when the market isn't working. And if you
Not
just
to
look at
make a profit. Yeah.
the American Rescue Plan right now is a major example of a federal intervention, a government intervention that's meant to really provide relief and support for people who are struggling because of the pandemic, and rent and utilities assistance, keeping people housed is just one example of that. But even without a pandemic, government is looking to address things like lead paint in older homes and how we cover the costs of that. We're looking at houses that no one's buying and they're falling down, dilapidated homes, and how we can utilize federal funds to refurbish and sell them and get them back into ownership. There's no market for that. That's where government can really play a significant role, and a role that's unique to its own.
Absolutely. I'm interested to know uh, your journey to Lincoln, how it came that you arrived to Lincoln, and also having grown up in Portland. Everyone thinks of Portland as the consummate liberal city in the U.S., but do you discern any similarities between Portland and Lincoln, even though obviously Nebraska is generally thought of as quite more conservative? A couple of questions in
Sure.
there.
We'll start with what brought me here. Love
Yeah.
brought me to Lincoln. I
Oh,
married a Nebraskan,
the best
and
reason of all.
yeah, my husband is from Superior, Nebraska, a small town on the
Okay.
Kansas border. And his parents had moved back to Lincoln after they'd raised their family, and so we wanted to move here when we wanted to raise our kids. We had a 4-month-old, and moved here with a baby, looking to have great schools and a great quality of life, and leave the California commute behind, and the California cost of living behind. So there are a lot of real practical reasons around family and cost of living and opportunity that brought us here.
Definitely.
And now I've lived here in Nebraska, over 18 years, so longer than I ever lived at one time in any other place. But I would say this: of all the many places I've lived, um, Lincoln is like them in that people are trying to get by the best they can. People are trying to have time with their families. They want a safe place to live. They want good schools. They want to, and I think a similarity between here and Portland is that people want to be good stewards of the environment. They want to care
Mm,
for the natural environment that we have
absolutely.
special here, whether it's taking care of old prairie and restoring it, or making sure that we we have these NRDs in Nebraska that look after our natural resources and help us to be good stewards. I think very much there is that thread that unifies us.
Mhm. Some of your thoughts remind me of what Senator Kerry said to us last fall. People are pretty much the same wherever you go that way. Now, Lincoln doesn't often follow the rest of the state politically. Is that purely because of the university in your estimation?
I would guess that that does play a real role. I think
Yeah.
that universities, they bring people from all over, and they encourage uh, inquiry and questioning of norms and traditions, and they really encourage people to think beyond the bounds and constraints of what has always been or what should always be. I think that role of bringing people with different perspectives together, and teaching people and focusing on innovation and iteration definitely is a factor. I do think that it's also worth noting that in a city like Lincoln, between UNL, between the city, the county, the state government, LPS, like think how many people here are employed in the public sector. They're employed essentially and paid by government taxpayer dollars. And then think about what it means to criticize how taxpayer dollars are spent. You're basically criticizing the people who suit up every day to provide public service, whether they're teachers or first responders or people on our road crews or out fixing the streets, or giving shots at vaccine clinics. So I think that in Lincoln, you've got a lot of people who are very invested in doing that quality work, quality public service, and are able to kind of maybe set aside those stereotypes about government because they're living it, they're delivering real
What an excellent
meaningful work.
point. Absolutely true. We talk a lot about in Nebraska Promise about how cool it is that UNL is smack dab right downtown, a block away from the city center and all kinds of ethnic restaurants, cool businesses like A Novel Idea, the Coffee House, the Mill, Blue Stem Books, and just a lot of great places within walking distance. How do you see that city to university relationship as being pivotal to Lincoln and to being just making this a good place to live?
I think it's absolutely pivotal. I think that the campus vibrancy is equivalent to the city's vibrancy. I mean, it's right in the heart of our community. And thank you for mentioning all those local businesses, because we're certainly encouraging everyone, including students, to please support local businesses. Vote with your dollars about what businesses you want to see survive the challenges of this incredibly difficult moment in our history. But I mean, the city and the university are partners, and that's how I see them. I mean, I have had really great relationship with the university leadership throughout my time as mayor. We have, of course, been focused on our pandemic response together, vaccines and safety and testing. But even before all of that, we have agreements about providing emergency response support for the campus. We work together to alter the campus footprint and change the roads and create walkways and change right-of-ways in ways that enhance campus life and kind of promote pedestrian safety and a sense of real unity in the campus. And we also do really cool innovations that put us on the map, like uh, Innovation Campus takes wastewater from our Teresa Street wastewater recovery system and turns it into heating and cooling for the Innovation Campus. That is an amazing achievement of innovation, sustainable innovation that the university can brag about, that we feel really great about. Doing experiments together with broadband and applying for grants to try and really advance technology to support rural access to broadband. That kind of collaboration makes life better for everybody, not just people in Lincoln. And I think it's really exciting that we can utilize and mobilize our shared resources towards greater purpose, towards progress, towards a life that hopefully is better and more sustainable for more people. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel very fortunate. Lincoln's very fortunate to be in not only a capital city, but the home of the flagship university, the University of Nebraska.
I agree. Now, I want to tap back into something that you mentioned earlier, your love for art history, because our classes in Nebraska Promise do a lot of art analysis to using art as a conduit to talk about other concepts and issues. And one of the pieces that we've examined most is the torn notebook sculpture downtown at 12th and Q. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Now, Lincoln is known as really internationally as a hotbed for public sculpture and university sculpture as well. And everybody knows, on the other hand, that when times get tough, art and the humanities are often the first to go. Uh, is public art a priority in your administration?
Yeah. Well, I first off want to agree. I love the torn notebook, and we do have incredible sculpture. And my predecessor, Mayor Beitler, was a big force behind that work.
Yes.
And the folks at Public Art Lincoln and the Lincoln Arts Council, we have a lot of committed philanthropists and community volunteers who've made that possible. In fact, to be honest, there hasn't been significant public expenditure of public dollars for these big pieces. In many cases, we rely on the generosity of donors and the community foundation and fundraising efforts, and some from tax increment financing projects. So we're very fortunate that we've made the most of the kind of limited investments that have been available to us. And public art's a priority in the sense that it's actually an economic development tool. I mean, I think it sounds like you love art for some of the same reasons I do. Like
Yes.
it's how people speak their truths. It's how we relate to across our differences. There are common elements of humanity that good art communicates, and it should last over time and space, and And it's amazing to connect to other people through art. But it also has this incredible economic development feature in that, when you install really impressive art, you can create tourist attractions. You can draw people to places. And even I would point to the Sheldon on your campus. The
Oh,
Sheldon is a piece of art. That institution, that museum is that Philip Johnson building is an incredible attraction for our community. People come from all over to see it. People come from all over to see our state capitol because of the
mhm.
art and artistry and architecture of that building. So I think what sometimes get lost is people's appreciation for how really good art and architecture can drive economic development as well, and create those postcards for a community that help you sell your community and bring people to it who might not otherwise stop.
Absolutely true. Sometimes when times are toughest, that's when we need art the most. That way. Now, I'm also a musician, and I will say that since I've moved to Lincoln in 1988, Lincoln has had the most thriving music scene, downtown in particular, that I've ever seen. Pre-COVID, that is. Can we come back to that after COVID?
I'm determined that we will. Absolutely, I think we can. I think our artists and musicians have shown incredible resiliency during the past year, whether they've done their Facebook Live concerts or working, through Lead Live online. Just the kinds of GoFundMe campaigns. I mean, they're doing so much to continue with their art, and all of us need to try to support them. And it's been fun to see some of that. Manifest itself online, whether it's the artist billboard campaign that we did, or the different efforts of the Lead Center to support local and neighborhood art. And the downtown master plan calls for a music district. We still have our eye on that as we look to bounce back and recover economically. The idea that we would still kind of create that special district that shines a light on the talent that we have in our community and the commitment to music and the arts. I think that could be a real way of marking our commitment and really looking to support the local music scene, because it is such a vibrant part of what it means to live in Lincoln.
It sure is. Is the music district, would that be the 14th and O area, like Duffy's and the Bourbon and around the corner, the Rococo?
That's right.
The
That's right.
zoo, of course.
Yeah, trying to hone in where it's organically happening and kind of
Right.
formalize that.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Now, I want to ask you personally, your personal tastes in music, art, reading. Do you read more fiction or more nonfiction?
Mhm.
What are your desert island albums, novels, so on and so forth?
Uh, uh, I haven't spent as much time reading this past year as I would have liked, other than reading about COVID. I don't
You've
know,
had
maybe
a few
you
other
relate
things
to that.
going on.
I feel like everything I read is about COVID. But I did read a great book before the pandemic that I'd recommend to anyone, and especially now that we've all experienced this pandemic. I read A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolls, and it's about a man who's on house arrest in a hotel in the middle of Moscow, an aristocrat who's sentenced there basically for life imprisonment, but he has like freedom within a very small space, and how he finds joy, how he creates happiness, how he creates a life of friendship and love within the confines is really a remarkable story, and so freaking
So,
relevant to this past year.
so applicable to right now, as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But I also, as a child, I loved The Count of Monte Cristo. Growing up, that was one of my favorite books because I love the adventure stories, the Odyssey. Um, I'm a sucker for Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice. And I love the Harry Potter series. You gotta love me some children's books because
Me
it's
too.
so fun. Uh, so those are among my favorite. I'm definitely a fiction person.
Oh, that warms my heart.
Yeah.
And
And Desert
music?
Island Discs, Sam Cooke's greatest hits for sure. I
Okay.
could listen to that over and over again on a desert island. Michael Jackson's greatest hits. You throw in the Eagles. I probably throw a lot of greatest hits albums in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. Now, one of the big things that we've been covering this semester in Nebraska Promise is the concept of finding common ground and compromise with people who are different from you. And that's a difficult challenge, right? In our divisive national times now, more than ever. How do you go about communicating with someone when you know in advance that there's going to be sharp disagreement?
Mhm. I think the best thing to do is to always start with where you agree. Try
Okay.
to start with a value you share or a purpose you're both serving.
The common ground.
Yeah, ground the conversation in intention, values, and purpose, and that's a good way to start.
Okay. What about times when the sides are too far apart and compromise just isn't possible?
I mean, that's hard, right?
Yeah,
Because you
right,
want to try and find a way forward, and it's
right.
important to do a lot of listening to try and like make that conversation not just perfunctory, but a
Mhm.
true discovery that you're actually open to hearing and learning something that you didn't expect. And you need to be able to acknowledge what's being said and what's being communicated to you and look for a path forward that takes that into account. So you're actually creating in the midst of a conversation if you're doing it well. But if you can't get there, if that doesn't actually lead to a path forward that you both can agree to, I think it's just important to respectfully acknowledge the difference,
Mhm.
to to be transparent about that and not sweep that under the rug, like, because no one likes surprises. So if you disagree, like, acknowledge the disagreement, saying, oh, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree here.
Mhm.
Hope you can understand why this is where we're going to go next.
Right,
And be clear, and at least it can be respectful, and
right.
maintaining respect for other people is really important.
Oh, absolutely, civility. And I really like what you said about listening. We talk about the importance of that a lot, and not only to gather more information for yourself, but as a demonstration that in fact you are acknowledging the other side's point of view, so to speak, and
Mhm.
uh, you know, being equitable in your attention in that sense. But uh, the past several years with COVID and the summer riots and just the overall national divisiveness. I mean, it's been some of the more tumultuous years in Lincoln City history. What's been the most challenging aspect for you as as mayor rather?
Yeah. Well, uh, when I hear this question, I immediately go to like my core, and the core feeling is just how challenging it has been to see so many people feeling pain, suffering because their loved ones are. The idea that if your loved one's in the hospital with COVID and you can't be there for them, and that person's in there alone, that's one of the most challenging aspects of the pandemic for me to be keenly aware of. And that's true with the riots. The idea that the killing of someone in Minneapolis um, was felt so deeply and profoundly by so many people across our country, but particularly our Black friends and neighbors who felt that pain, uh, that trauma, knowing that even though it was miles away, it felt close and personal to them is absolutely painful, right? That's another aspect of the past year that's been incredibly difficult, is recognizing how far we have to go in terms of race relations, in terms of justice, and in terms of even like healthcare access and equity. And so that that kind of pain has been really hard. And then I think following on that is the the uncertainty and the fear that people are experiencing, and recognizing that that's going to lead to different expressions. Um, there are certainly people who are going to take that and dig in and go volunteer and help the food bank or create a GoFundMe for the artists, or who are going to um, sew masks and PPE for people in need. And then there are people who are going to lash out because that fear turns to anger, and and it's so profound that lashing out feels like the answer. And really trying to find a way to meet somewhere away from that anger and try to help relieve people's fears and uncertainties, and to underscore again and again the way that we're connected to one another, the way that the pandemic has shown so clearly. Like this plague, this virus shows how, as human beings, we are just so interconnected. But that's true all the time, and so our our future, our success, our security, our health, it really depends on our ability to actually work together and to embrace each other and not to turn away from one another. And working to get people to turn towards each other in a time of so much uncertainty has been a real challenge. But I have to say, Lincolnites continue to impress and inspire me in this regard. There are people who are doing the work, whether it's on the pandemic or widening their circles of understanding around racial justice. There are people who are looking to do the work it takes to bridge across differences, to fill the gaps in our knowledge, to try to cross divides that exist. And those are the people who keep me going. Those are the people who inspire me to continue in this work, and the people who are bridging. And I hope to amplify their efforts in my day-to-day work too.
Absolutely. It makes me think of my students. They just keep showing up day after day, such tenacity even under these challenging times. And I don't know if I would have had the intestinal fortitude to do that myself, but they do. So I find it really inspiring. Also inspiring is your great empathy for people, and that's just such a core piece of great leadership that we need now more than ever. Do you feel like just over the past couple of years with everything that's been thrown at us, do you feel like I can handle anything at this point? I can do it. I hope you
Well,
say yes.
I haven't had a flood yet, Dan. So
Okay,
I'm waiting. I mean, knock on wood.
right.
We've been through a lot together as a community, and I do feel like I've gotten 10 years of experience as a mayor in one or two. So
Mhm.
it is hard to imagine a more difficult year than the one we've just experienced. But um, but you sign up for the job and you take a vow. You swear to do the job, and it's like a marriage vow. It's in sickness and in health, and for richer or poorer, and come what may. So I feel very fortunate to 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 be in this role in this moment, and to have the trust of the community, and to be able to have such a great purpose. It's a weird thing to go through life. I feel like right now I'm doing, and maybe we all are, doing the most important work of our lives. It's really an odd thing to have that recognition in real time. I think often you look back and think, oh, that was an important thing I did. No, like right now
Yeah.
is the most important work of my life and our lives. So we all are lucky to have such incredible purpose, such incredible reason to be striving, because what we do matters. What we do is taking care of young people who are at college for the first time, trying to make their way through a world that's disrupted. And what we're doing is trying to keep people healthy in a moment when that's really challenging. I mean, we all have this incredible purpose right now to serve. And so while none of us would want to live through a pandemic, in many ways, we're very fortunate to be the ones, because everywhere I turn, I see people stepping up to answer that call to a higher service and purpose.
Well, Lincoln is the ones that are lucky to have you at the helm right now during this time. That's for sure. I'll tell you that again before we finish. But what's the best part of living in Lincoln? You've lived in a lot of different places, interesting places like Portland, San Francisco. What's the best part of living in Lincoln?
And I've lived in New York and Chicago and abroad, and yeah, I mean, what I love about Lincoln is that um, we have time for one another here. In every other place I've lived, like the commutes were long, and the rat race was huge, and the hours at work were long, and here the real luxury of Lincoln, I think, is time to be a good neighbor, time to be a good parent, time to be a good friend. And so, when I see people, families playing ball, playing catch in the yard right at 5:30 or 6 p.m., or I have my neighbor brings me baked goods because my kids love them, and wanted to make my kids happy. I mean, these little touches mean so much. The commute that's less than 10 minutes, it means so much over time. It adds up to a quality of life that is richer, and in many ways just more profound, because we are able to, and what's more valuable than our time? What's more valuable than the time we get to spend with each other and dedicate to caring for one another?
That's
You don't have that when you're commuting 2 hours a day in Silicon Valley.
absolutely true. I live in Midtown, block off of 27th and O, and so I'm around some of the best ethnic groceries and some of the best restaurants in the city. And how do you see our significant local immigrant population contributing to the cultural life of Lincoln?
Yeah, I mean, the diversity of our cultures, perspectives, backgrounds is a core strength of Lincoln.
Yes.
It's something to be celebrated and honored, and we're so lucky to be, as Mary Piper calls it, the middle of everywhere. That's how I think of Lincoln. We are a crossroads, and we are lucky to have the infusion of so many different experiences right here from our new Americans, and the enriching aspects of the culture, whether it's the food that you enjoy or the music and the celebrations and the interactions among students in our public schools. That is really something that changes the ecosystem of Lincoln, and we're better for it.
Hmm. I'd never heard that, the middle of everywhere, by Mary Piper. I like that. I've always been operating on Young's. Everyone knows this is nowhere, but I like your version a lot better. Now, many of our students, Nebraska Promise and otherwise, are going to want to branch out and go elsewhere after graduation. Uh, why should they stay, or why should they come back?
Right. Yeah, I have a mixed recommendation there. I mean, of course, we want our young, talented folks to stay. We think there are great opportunities here to, especially with our entrepreneurial sort of community that's so supportive, and growing, or becoming known as a hub of the Silicon Prairie. The cost of living makes it a lot more feasible for people to try out new ideas and pursue, sort of an entrepreneurial career, because it doesn't take as much to live here as it does in other cities. We've got an incredible broadband network that supports working remotely if people want to stay here but work elsewhere. That we have that going for us. Again, the quality of life that I spoke to, and the richness of relationships that you can have here. We need, people will invest in talent that stays here in Lincoln. So there are lots of reasons to stay. That said, going out into the world and getting some of that wisdom that's born of experience and
Yeah.
different and new experiences is really valid and wonderful too. And I would just say that if people do go out into the world and have experiences other places, pay attention to your quality of life. Pay attention to what you like and dislike, what's there and what's missing, and think about how Lincoln compares, and then come back. Definitely come back. Bring your perspective. Bring your networks you've developed. Bring your ideas. That's going to make Lincoln an even better place to call home for everyone who's here. And I do believe that we offer an unparalleled quality of life for people who decide to stay here.
I do too, and I appreciate your honesty in your answer as well. I feel exactly the same. A final question for you, if I may, Mayor, and if you would, this question, answer not as mayor, but just as a Lincolnite, and someone that's lived in a lot of different places, but knows Lincoln well. What is one thing that you would suggest to our Nebraska Promise students that they experience in our city before they graduate? And it could be a cultural thing, but what's one thing they've got to do while they're here in Lincoln?
Besides eat Ivana cone ice cream, I actually would say that it's more of an approach to living, and that is to approach life like a journalist. You know, it's really easy to be in an elevator and be quiet. It's really easy to move through life with your headphones plugged in. But I would say take them out and get to know people who have different experiences than you, who've come from different places than you, whose life story is different than yours, because everyone has something interesting about them. It may not be obvious on the surface, but if you actually make the effort to get to know people or get out of your cliques or your comfort zones, like finding out what is that nugget about someone is a really, it's a great way to live life, and it's a great way to enrich your own life. And so to me, I guess what I want them to experience in the city is to get off the beaten path and and go walk a different way to school each day. You know,
Mhm.
encounter new people and be open to new experiences and conversations. Most people want to have a conversation; they're just too scared to be the first to go. To
Especially
open that up.
Nebraskans.
Mhm, mhm.
What a marvelous answer. Now, I love that. Talk about good listener. Lori, do you have any questions before we finish up here?
This is dangerous, just letting me listen to the whole thing and then get to the end. And
Well,
no, this is probably my favorite thing. I'm a English major, natural introvert, so sitting back and kind of getting to listen to a good, Q&A and other people talk is probably my favorite thing. um, I know Dan, kind of started off the webinar, Mayor, saying that it was kind of fortuitous, this birthday breakfast that we had down at Coltiva, and then you walked in, and I think it was shortly after you had become mayor. Like, it was very early in that transition for you. And I think we both had like a you know moment of awe, where we were just kind of in this space. And of course we didn't say hello, you looked very busy. But Dan did. He kind of pointed you out, and that was like one of the best birthday gifts. He's like, I'm here having breakfast, the mayor just walked in, this is fantastic. So I think none of us knew what you were in for, in this past year with the pandemic and everything. But it's been interesting. It's just been interesting to see you grow in your leadership. I mean, you were a strong leader anyway, but I hats off to you for the incredible work that you've done, and just, keeping Lincoln going. I'm excited for the students to see this, because I think it's a really, really cool moment to see these people who have been just out there doing it in the world, just kind of like talking to them casually. And I think Dan is really good at getting people to talk. So we appreciate you being here today, even with the technology
No worries.
issues.
Well, well, thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say how honored I am to work alongside the amazing, dedicated professionals at the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department and the rest of the city of Lincoln. Our team is lean but mighty, dedicated and strong, and they have been working so hard for so long. And it's a privilege to try to amplify their efforts and make it clear to everyone else just all that they're doing to serve our community. And they are the heroes, along with people across our community who've stepped up and been so courageous in the face of COVID. And so thank you for everything you're doing as educators to persevere in a year that has been so difficult for educators everywhere. Your ability to keep teaching and keep going is really, it's really been fundamental to, so many. I mean, I have a first year college student in my, that I've raised, and to be able to continue learning despite the challenges is quite a feat, and large part due to your perseverance and resilience. So thank you.
well, thank you very much, Mayor Baird. It's been a tremendous honor. So we so many thanks to you for taking time out of your schedule. We're very appreciative.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a joy. And good
Okay,
luck to all your students.
thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care now.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.